At 7:42 on a rainy Monday morning, Daniel Carter stood outside the office of the company where he had worked for 11 years. He was holding a small cardboard box. Inside it were a coffee mug, a framed photo of his 2 children, and a pair of old work gloves. But the thing that hurt most wasn't the box, it was the sentence he had just heard. "You're being let go." Daniel, his manager, Melissa Grant, had said it calmly, almost casually. Daniel stared at her. "Today." Melissa nodded. "Today." Daniel swallowed hard. "I don't understand. I've never missed a deadline. I've worked weekends. I covered shifts when people needed me." Melissa leaned back in her chair. "It's not personal. That company is making changes." Daniel looked at the floor. He wanted to argue. He wanted to ask why someone who had given 11 years of his life to the company could be dismissed in less than 5 minutes. But then he thought about his children, his 8-year-old daughter, Emma, his 12-year-old son, Noah, their apartment rent, the electric bill, Noah's school shoes, which had already started falling apart, and the promise Daniel had made to Emma the night before, "Be there for your school presentation." So Daniel simply nodded. "All right." He picked up his box. As he walked toward the door, Melissa smiled. "Good luck." Daniel stopped for a second. Then he quietly said, "Thank you." Outside, the rain had become heavier. Daniel sat in his old car and placed the box on the passenger seat. For several minutes, he didn't start the engine. He just stared through the windshield. Then his phone rang. It was Emma. "Daddy." Daniel quickly wiped his eyes. "Hey, sweetheart, are you coming home early today?" Daniel looked at the cardboard box. "Yes, really?" "Yes, I'll be there." She laughed. "Good. Noah says you're going to cook tonight." Daniel smiled despite himself. "Tell Noah he's helping." "Okay." The call ended. Daniel started the car. He had no idea how he was going to pay next month's bills. But he knew one thing: his children would not see him give up. Daniel had become a single father 6 years earlier, after his wife died unexpectedly. He had learned how to do everything himself. He learned to braid Emma's hair. He learned which medicine Noah needed when he caught a cold. He learned how to make dinner while checking homework. He learned to sleep only 4 or 5 hours when money was tight, and every morning, no matter how tired he was, he told his children the same thing: "We'll figure it out." That evening, Daniel made spaghetti. It wasn't fancy, it wasn't even very good, but Emma ate 2 plates. Noah ate 3 after dinner. Daniel helped Emma practice her presentation at the kitchen table. Noah watched from the couch. Then Noah noticed the cardboard box sitting near the door. "Dad." Daniel looked up. "What's that?" Daniel paused. "I lost my job today." The room became quiet. Emma stopped practicing. "Are you going to get another one?" Daniel smiled. "Yes." "How long will it take?" Daniel looked at his son. "I don't know." Noah nodded slowly. Then he said something Daniel would remember for the rest of his life: "We can use less electricity." Daniel's heart tightened. He walked over and hugged his son. "You don't have to worry about grown-up problems, but you're my dad." Daniel closed his eyes. "Yes," he whispered, "and that's exactly why I'll handle it." That night, after the children went to sleep, Daniel opened his laptop. He updated his resume. Then he sent applications to 14 companies. The next morning, he sent 12 more. For the next 2 weeks, he kept searching. He took temporary work wherever he could find it. He delivered groceries. He repaired broken shelves. He worked early mornings at a warehouse. At night, he returned home exhausted, but he still packed lunches, still checked homework, still attended Emma's school presentation, and still told his children, "We're going to be okay." What Daniel didn't know was that his former company was about to discover exactly how much they had lost when they let him go. And the person who had celebrated his firing was about to learn that lesson the hard way. 3 weeks after Daniel was fired, Melissa walked into the company cafeteria with a smile. She had just received an email from the regional office. The company had finally approved her promotion. She sat down with several co-workers. "I told everyone Daniel wasn't essential," she said proudly. One co-worker looked uncomfortable. "Things seem a little harder without him." Melissa laughed. "He was just one employee." But that afternoon, the problems began. A major client called. An important shipment had been delayed. Nobody knew why. Then another client complained about an incorrect order. A machine stopped working. The person who normally handled the maintenance records couldn't find the instructions. Then a supplier called, asking for Daniel. "Who is handling this account now?" the supplier asked. Melissa replied, "Our operations team." The supplier paused. "Daniel always handled it well." "He's not here anymore," the supplier sighed. "That may be a problem." By the end of the week, the company had lost 2 important clients. The following Monday, the regional boss, Richard Hale, arrived unexpectedly. Richard had been with the company for nearly 20 years. He walked through the office and immediately noticed the tension. "Where's Daniel?" Melissa looked surprised. "Daniel?" "Yes, Daniel Carter." Melissa smiled awkwardly. "We let him go." Richard stopped walking. "You did what?" "He was part of the staff reduction." Richard looked around. "Who approved that?" Melissa hesitated. "I did." Richard's expression changed. Where is he? Melissa didn't answer. He doesn't work here anymore, she finally said. Richard looked at the operations manager who was handling his accounts. The manager looked down. Several people. Who knows the system he built? Silence. Richard turned toward Melissa. Do you understand what Daniel was responsible for? Melissa didn't respond. Richard took a deep breath. Find out where he is. Meanwhile, Daniel was sitting in a hospital waiting room. Emma had fallen sick at school. She had a high fever, and Daniel had rushed her to the clinic. He sat beside her bed holding her hand. Daddy, I'm here. Are you still looking for work? Daniel forced a smile. Yes. Did you find one? Daniel looked at his daughter. Not yet. Emma squeezed his finger. You'll find one. Daniel nodded. I will. But that night, after Emma finally fell asleep, Daniel sat alone in his car. He checked his bank account. The number was painfully low. The rent was due in 5 days. His temporary warehouse job had reduced his hours. His car needed repairs, and the electricity company had already sent a warning. Daniel rested his head against the steering wheel for the first time in years. He whispered, I don't know how much longer I can do this. His phone buzzed. It was a message from Noah. Dad, don't worry. We're a team. Daniel stared at the words. Then he cried quietly, not because he was weak, because he was tired of being strong every minute of every day. The next morning, Daniel made a decision. He would stop waiting for someone to give him another job. He would use everything he had learned over 11 years and start something of his own. He had spent years fixing problems for other people. Now he would try to build something for his family. He began helping small local businesses organize their deliveries and inventory. At first, there was only one customer. Then 2, then 5. The work was small, but Daniel was good at it. He understood the problems because he had lived them. One evening, while Daniel was helping Noah with math, his phone rang. It was an unknown number. Is this Daniel Carter? Yes, this is Richard Hale from your former company. Daniel went silent. Richard continued. You need to talk. Daniel looked at the clock. I don't work there anymore. I know. Then what is this about? Richard paused. We made a serious mistake. Daniel closed his eyes. He could already hear Melissa's voice in his memory. It's not personal, Richard said quietly. We need you back. Daniel looked across the room. Emma was drawing at the table. Noah was doing homework. His children were safe. His small business was finally beginning to move forward. For 11 years, Daniel had been the man who stayed when everyone else left. Now the people who had fired him suddenly needed him, and for the first time, Daniel had the power to decide what happened next. The next morning, Daniel drove to his former company. He walked into the same office where he had been fired 3 weeks earlier. Melissa was waiting. She looked nervous. Richard stood beside the window. Daniel, Richard said. Daniel nodded. Mr. Hale. Richard gestured toward a chair. Please sit. Daniel sat. Melissa remained standing. Richard spoke first. I owe you an apology. Daniel didn't respond. We underestimated your role in the company, Richard continued. We thought we could divide your responsibilities among several people. Daniel looked at him and Richard gave a tired smile. We were wrong. Daniel nodded slowly. What exactly do you want? Richard placed a folder on the desk. We want you back. Daniel opened it. The offer included a higher salary, better hours, and a management position. He looked at the numbers. It was more the money than he had ever made there. Melissa finally spoke. Didn't know how much you handled. Daniel looked at her. They didn't ask. She lowered her eyes. Daniel wasn't angry anymore. That surprised him. 3 weeks earlier, he would have accepted the offer immediately. But things had changed. He thought about the nights he had spent building his small business. He thought about Noah's message, we're a team. He thought about Emma asking if he would be home for dinner. Then Daniel closed the folder. I appreciate the offer. Richard looked hopeful, but I can't come back. Melissa looked shocked. Richard asked, why? Daniel took a breath. Because I already built something else. He explained how he had started helping small businesses. It wasn't a huge company. It wasn't making him rich, but it was his . And more importantly, he could choose his hours. He could take Emma to school. He could help Noah with homework. He could be home for dinner. Richard listened quietly. Finally, he said, then perhaps we made another mistake. Daniel raised an eyebrow. Richard smiled. Instead of hiring you back, maybe we should hire your company. Daniel looked surprised. Richard explained that the company needed help rebuilding its delivery and inventory system. Daniel could work with them as an independent contractor. He could set his own schedule. Daniel thought for a moment. Then he nodded. I'll consider it. Richard stood. That's fair. Before Daniel left, Melissa approached him. I was wrong about you. Daniel looked at her. You were wrong about what I was worth. Melissa nodded. I know. Daniel didn't say anything cruel. He simply replied, I hope you don't make the same mistake with someone else. Then he walked out. For the first time in weeks, Daniel stepped outside without feeling afraid of the future. He didn't know exactly how everything would turn out, but he knew he had made the right choice. Months later, Daniel's small business was growing. He had hired 2 people, his children, still lived in the same apartment. They still ate simple meals. There were still bills. There were still difficult days, but something had changed. Daniel no longer felt like he was simply surviving. He was building. One Friday evening, Emma came running into the apartment. "Dad." Daniel turned. "What?" My teacher asked what my dad does. Daniel smiled. "What did you tell her?" Emma grinned. "Told her you help businesses when they don't know what they're doing." "Know what they're?" Laughed from the couch. "That sounds about right." Daniel laughed. Then Emma hugged him. "You're the best dad." Daniel hugged her tightly. He looked around the small apartment. Nothing about their life looked perfect. The furniture was old. The kitchen was small. The car still made a strange noise, but his children were there and he was there. That was enough. Daniel later learned that losing his job had not been the end of his story. It had been the moment he stopped allowing other people to decide his value. Sometimes life takes something away from us before we understand what it was. Making room for Daniel thought he had lost everything when he walked out of that office carrying a cardboard box. Instead, he had found courage he didn't know he had. He had found a new path. And most importantly, he had learned that being a good father was never about having a perfect life. It was about showing up. Even when you were tired, even when you were scared, even when you didn't know what tomorrow would bring.